Today we are here and we are with Susan Benoit. She is a breathing coach in the city of Ottawa, and she is the wife of my strength and conditioning coach, Andre. And she has been helping people with health now in all aspects, probably for the past 10 to 15 years. And she has a lot of experience in the world of breath work. And being that it is all over the place and being talked about, I said no better than a person to have Susan on and explain to us more and talk about her personal experiences with breath work. I won't say the bio. I want Susan to tell us all about her journey and how she got into becoming a breath coach. So Susan, tell us how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Gosh, I've been in the health and fitness industry over 20 years. I'm old. I started as a massage therapist. That's really how I started. And then I got into like exercise science, personal training. And that's really how I met Andre. Yeah, I was a strength coach, and like long story short, I ended up finally like opening a gym with Andre, and that's kind of been the route. I've done a lot of manual therapy, from like fascial stretch therapy, all of that. So the human anatomy and human body has always been a huge thing for me. I was a national level swimmer. I became a swim coach, was one of the coaches for like the next gen para team for the Canadian Paralympic swim team.
Okay.
So breathing has kind of been a part of my life. Like it's, as a swimmer, you do need to have good lung control. And when I was a coach, that's kind of where my first I really dove deep into breathing. I'm really actually trying to work with younger athletes, functional breathing patterns. And so that's kind of where it started. And then we moved to Ottawa, and unfortunately the pandemic hit. And then I had a stroke.
Wow.
And then, 3 weeks later that they found out that stroke was caused by a tumor inside of my heart. And I went in for emergency open heart surgery. And then really from there, that's really where my journey started then with breath work. Unfortunately, in the pandemic, I think a lot of people got lost in the medical, arena. And I was one of those people, because I have a really strong background in exercise science, rehab, recovery in that aspect. When my exercise rehab got canceled, your cardiac rehab got canceled, it had to be over the phone. I was working with a physio, and honestly, he was great. But at the end of the day, like I could tell you what my resting heart rate was. I could tell you how my breathing patterns were. I could tell you what I was doing for trying to like regain my strength. I could like just explain things in really good detail. So he was like, God, you're doing really well. I think you're fine. And honestly, Harry, I felt great. And then bam, 6 months later, I started to suffer from like debilitating anxiety and depression. Had a massive panic attack in a grocery store with Andre, and we had to leave the cart and like go home, because I was just like in this complete and utter mess, and he had no clue what was going on. I laugh about it now, but honestly, it just went downhill from there. I started to not be able to drive the kids to school. I couldn't leave the house. I wasn't speaking to anybody. I wasn't returning my family's phone calls. Yeah. And then I'm just going to say like trigger warning for people that deal with mental health issues. I started to self-harm myself. And then I had a failed suicide attempt, and Andre had to deal with that. And we worked through it. Tried to go on medication stuff, wasn't making it any better. I actually started to get even worse. And it was just like, let's just keep trying to like up the dosage. And I just couldn't do it. Like I literally was just like to Andre, this is going to happen again. And this time, like, you're going to find me and it's going to be over. And it was horrific. And so he put me in contact with a breath and trauma coach. And I started to work with them every day for 2 weeks straight, like not taking a day off and really just focusing on that. And each day just got a little bit better. I started to wake up and not have suicidal ideologies. I woke up and I wasn't wanting to self-harm myself. Yeah, so like it really helped me a lot. And I just knew, again, being in the industry that I am in, and I think my path has always been to like help people. And so I wanted to learn absolutely everything I could about breath work and more about like the scientific background of it. And so then I just like dove down a rabbit hole with breathwork and started doing courses and mentorships and all of that. And so really the last 3 years have just really been me consistently continuing learning breathwork, different breathwork techniques, working under different breathwork coaches. I have mentors right now. Like one is like a breathwork therapist. So like she's my therapist and we do breathwork. That's how we work through things. I'm doing like a 6-month mentorship with a guy out of Australia who's like a respiratory therapist scientist. And so it's just, yeah, you know, and then I've done a lot of like trauma therapy mentorships and somatic and all of that. So that's really kind of me in a nutshell.
That's a thank you for sharing that in-depth background. I mean, that's it's always, to me, it's always great to hear the story of the background of how someone found their passion, right? Because you'd already found your niche of where you were going to be. You're a coach, right? And then what you were able to do is then you went through your own journey, and then you realized where you really wanted to be to help people. And so when you were going through, I want to ask a couple questions. When you were going through that 2 weeks intensive, was that like an 8-hour session, a 2-hour session? Was it a full day? Did you move out of the house and go stay with that coach? How was that process?
Yeah, it was online because again, we were in the thick of COVID. And so we just like zoomed in. Honestly, it's probably, I'm going to say really anywhere from like an hour and a half to 2.5 hours, where it was just like, where he would like, again, he knew my journey because Andre knows him and he is really big in the breath world, like Dan DeLewis. Like he is.
I know Dan. I've taken 2 of his courses. Yes, amazing, amazing.
Love Dan. Yeah. So yeah, he just like literally would spend like about 2.5 hours on the phone over Zoom with me, where we would like really do breath work and then work through the PTSD that I suffered. Like we worked through those blockages and obstacles and started to try to like break through them so that I could get better. You know, it wasn't, and I think because like with breathwork, there's so many different variations of breathwork, and you can really, I like to say that there's like 3 different kinds between functional breathing, then just kind of like experimenting with different techniques, and then breathwork, like breakthrough breathwork journeying. And I would say like that's where we focused on because I already knew how to breathe. Yes, my breathing was even a bit more restricted because I had just had open heart surgery and I was on bypass. So you know, you have to relearn how to breathe again. They take your lungs like you're out and you have to relearn. The first thing as soon as you wake up from open heart surgery is like they get somebody in there to like teach you how to rebreathe again so that you have full activation of your diaphragm and it's fully moving up and down and you stay out of the chest. So I already knew functional breathing. Yes, there was some restrictions because of the surgery, but it was really, we were on a journey to be like, let's break these blockages and barricades that you have right now.
I'm a basic person thinker, right? So I breathe and I always know that I don't breathe, right? So it's something that I even notice in my clients because, obviously anxiety, depression, low energy are probably the 3 things that we commonly hear in our office. And the anxiety, depression is more of like spouts of it, right? Or spurts of it, just, with life going on, everybody feels it. But the anxiety one is big. And I was just in the office with a client the other day. And I said, can you just do me a favor and breathe? Because I can feel your like anxiety just sitting in the chair. So walk me through what is breathe? I mean, I think I breathe, right? So tell me in terms of breathing, what is it? Like, what is breath work? What does it mean? So like, I'll break it down because I hear all these things about it, but I've never really in depth gone into research. So I'm sure a lot of clients are like, what does this mean? So what does breath work mean?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think at the end of the day, like, I think we take our breathing for granted because we involuntary breathe, right? It's the first thing that we do when we come into this earth. It will be the last thing that we do, right? So we are constantly breathing and it's something that we actually don't have to think about. So I think that most people really do believe that they breathe properly because they're breathing. And I think that some people think that if they need to have some sort of respiratory disease or anything like that to have poor functional breathing, and that's not it. If you have like poor sleep and have these bouts of anxiety or live in this sympathetic driven state, that fight or flight, you most likely have like dysfunctional breathing. And so the first thing that I always look for with a client is, let's see how your functional breathing is. So everyday breathing should be through the nose. I like to say like the nose is for breathing, the mouth is for eating. Now, don't get me wrong. I do mouth breathing for people. And when we go deeper into journeying aspects of breath work, where we work through these emotional things, we go into mouth breathing. But for functional breathing every day should be through the nose. It should be silent and it should be slow.
Okay.
So to me, those are the three pillars that I always work on with anybody that is here. You should be able to do your day through those three things, you know, driving, making dinner, watching TV, any of that. You should be able to do those three pillars, no problem.
So what are
Most
they? Sorry, can you repeat them again, those three? Because you said them really fast. So
Yeah. So silent through the nose. So when you breathe, if you're to stick like the index finger underneath the nostril, that you should barely feel the air come in and come out.
okay.
So most people think then, well, then that must be a shallow breath. No, you still need to breathe deep. And when I mean deep is the furthest away from the nose. So you start that activation of the breath down in the belly, in the pelvis area. So it's still a full breath, silent and slow. The average person breathes like anywhere between like over 20,000 times a day. Usually most people breathe between 24 to 26,000 times a day. And most people have a breath rate of like usually 12 to 16 breaths per minute. And for functional breathing, you should be at about 6 breaths per minute. And so that's about a 5-second inhale and a 5-second exhale. Most people are sitting around at 2.
I was going to say maybe 1. Okay.
As their chest breathing, and they don't know how to get full belly breathing. Also on top of that, I think that people like to say like, oh, you'll hear the word, and I think go flop back and forth between diaphragmatic breathing and belly breathing. So some people are like, oh my gosh, you don't know how to activate your diaphragm. Your diaphragm is always moving. If you are breathing, your diaphragm is moving. You can't breathe without the diaphragm going up and down. That's that dome shaped right underneath like the rib cage, right? It flattens down on the inhale, it moves back up on the exhale. So it's always moving. You just might not have proper control of that, meaning that you are breathing into the chest. And so that diaphragm doesn't drop down fully as far as it can go down because you aren't fully taking a full activation breath where you're getting 360 degrees. So when I think like, right, again, back in the day, like when I was younger, it was like when you breathed in, it was like suck in, like you're trying to be as skinny as possible on that inhale. Right. And then we got told like breathe and your belly should come out so far. But really what it is that your lower thoracic component, so like the belly, back, rib cage should move together in 360 degrees and then come back together again. So when you take that inhale, yes, the stomach should move forward, but the rib cage should move out and you should feel pressure coming into your back so that all should move. So again, some people can breathe down deep, but it's like they don't know how to activate the rib cage and they don't know how to find more space. So they can't breathe into the intercostals, which is those muscles in between the rib cage. They don't know how to expand and find more space. That's also why after a couple deep nasal belly breathing, they feel like they need to take a big inhale through their mouth.
Yes, I've done that. Okay.
So that's why functional breathing, those 3 pillars is like what you do every day. And so again, you being in, working out and doing all of that, you should be able to continue through a workout or definitely get over time. This is something that you continue to practice, like if you're working out, you continue to train and you consistently get stronger and all that. It's like the same thing with your breathing patterns. They get stronger and you can do things with full exertion through your nose. There are many Olympic track stars that run fully nasal breathing. You know what I mean? Okay. So it is completely, like totally attainable. Now, it might not be attainable for a lot of people, but it doesn't mean it can't be. Do you know what I mean? It's something that you can like work towards, but you should definitely you should be able to breathe deep, slow, and silent throughout your day.
So like I try to do it where I would walk around the block. So it would be 500 meters. And it took me probably about a week before I could do it without breathing from my mouth. Right.
Okay.
So that has nothing to do about fitness level. Sometimes I think that some people say, oh, I'm out of shape. I can't even walk around the block without mouth breathing. So you're saying that's a trained technique that you have to be conscious about to make that better. And as you practice it, you have the capacity to move that better. So what are some of the benefits then of breathing from my nose versus my mouth?
I think, first of all, nitric oxide is produced in the nasal cavity, right? nitric oxide vasodilates. So it allows for more blood flow, which is great for circulation, for recovery, to be able to get better blood flow to the body. And so like, to me, that is like the biggest thing, right? Also, like our nasal cavity filtrates pathogens and all of that. So debris and anything that comes in. So it's better for the immune system. The mouth doesn't do that. Right. Again, when you start to breathe through the mouth, it becomes very dry. You become very dehydrated. So the nasal cavity is like a muscle. It needs to be utilized. It's like the same thing when people get congested and then all they keep doing is like sniffing to try to like clear the nasal cavity. Well, your nasal cavity is already inflamed. So why are you inflaming it even more by just consistently sniffing? That's not going to do anything for you. So there's different techniques to be able to open your nasal cavity so that you can actually breathe through it. And I get it. There's going to be people like, right, I've broken my nose or have deviated septums and all of that. And yes, those are going to come into play. And those are definitely case by case scenarios. There are some people who've had broken noses and stuff, and we've been able to kind of just work through and be able to get better optimal breathing. I'm not going to say it's perfect. There's also some people that said that they've had surgery for deviated septums and like their breathing's become worse. So, everything's kind of a case by case scenario. I don't think there's no black or white in the world of breathing.
So I'll get more nitric oxide, so better blood flow to my body, and I will be able to fight off parasites, pathogens. I have read somewhere about the sympathetic to the parasympathetic. If I breathe through my nose, it lowers cortisol. So can you give us a little bit of explanation of the breathing technique that can help with lowering that anxiety feeling, right? So parasympathetic is the calm state, sympathetic is the stress state. And I would say majority of people who are listening to this are in the stressed state, probably 85% of the day. So how can that breathing help them lower that stress feeling? So how does that all work?
Yeah. So when you breathe through the mouth, again, because really what you come back to is that most people don't know how to breathe properly, and the fact that they chest breathe, right? We breathe here, our shoulders are up. If you've ever like watched yourself brushing the teeth, most people have their shoulders up here. And so you can't breathe deep down when you're in this like stress state. Your breathing stays in the chest. When you do breathe into the chest, that is your sympathetic nervous system. That is your fight or flight. That's where you have, the adrenaline, all of that is going to be activated, where your parasympathetic, your fight or flight, the rest and digest, your parasympathetic system is activated when you breathe into the belly. Because again, when you get full activation of breathing all the way down into the belly, the diaphragm lowers, all of your organs can drop down. And then as you breathe, exhale out, they all move back up. And it is like a massage. And so we are, again, increasing blood flow, increasing the lymphatic system. And so everything starts to calm down because you are not over breathing. Also, usually when we're breathing really fast, we're over breathing, meaning that we're breathing off too much carbon dioxide. And we actually need carbon dioxide in the system for the oxygen to be released out of the blood cell, for it to be then released into the tissues and organs for better recovery, for better like stress levels, right? For us to lower those cortisol levels. So that's really why deeper, as in like getting all the way down into the belly, 360 degrees, slowing the breath down, can help with lowering cortisol, increasing that sympathetic. Now, there are thousands of different types of breathing techniques that you can do. There's box breathing, which is like a 4-second inhale, a 4-second pause at the top, a 4-second exhale, a 4-second pause at the bottom. There's 4-7-8, which is like an inhale for 4, hold for 7, exhale for 8. There is just even like the conscious connected, where you just like stay focused, like on an inhale for 4, exhale for 4, where it's just a constant flow, but it's a very nice, like slow rhythmic breathing. There are so many different types of breath work that will help for this. If you are doing hyperventilating breath work, I think there's a time and place for it. If you are trying to really just like relax, not the best thing. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Now, I think this is it. You are going to find a lot of research, and you're going to find a lot of breath coaches that say, why would you do more why would you even do a hyperventilating type of breath work? It's so bad for us. Like, why would you do that? You're breathing off too much carbon dioxide. It's not beneficial, blah, 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 blah. but I'm a breath coach that I will incorporate every type of breath work. I'm not just a Wim Hof breath instructor. Like I've taken like 10 weeks and all that, but that's not what I focus on. I don't just focus on functional breathing as well. I think that there's a time and place for everything. So when I was in my, depths of anxiety and depression, we did very fast, intense, hyperventilating breath work. We did focus staying in the belly, but you still activate the sympathetic nervous system, especially when you start to mouth breathe. But that's what needed to meet me. I needed to meet where I was at for me to come down.
Yeah,
now there's some other, that are up there and need parasympathetic breath work, which is just very like long, slower breathing that will bring them out of there. And that is why it's so important that when you meet with a breath coach, they do an assessment, they get like a history from you, and they figure out what is the best course of action.
So what you're saying is if I'm a person who is, I look at this as something that someone could use before bedtime, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of people just, I always say to people, I don't think they breathed all day. They didn't take a good breath all day. So you're saying they could do a 4. I think the easiest one that most people remember is the 4-4, right? Is that, they get into bed, they could do a 5 minutes of just 4 seconds in, 4 seconds out, really try to bring that breath into the belly. And that would probably help someone sleep because they would be able to calm that nervous system down, giving them the capacity to have a better quality sleep, right?
Yeah. I do like extended, sorry to interrupt you. I do like exhales before bedtime because extended exhales actually lower the heart rate. So it slows the heart rate and it actually will lower blood pressure over time. And so that is, especially at bedtime, it's very beneficial to do extended exhales. So it really could even just be like a flow breath work between like a 4 inhale, 6 exhale, 5 inhale, 7 exhale, whatever you want to be. But extended exhales are very beneficial to really calming the nervous system.
And is that exhale from the nose, correct? You're not using your mouth at that point. Okay. And so then now moving towards performance, you talked about when you're doing a workout, you should be able to nose breathe. Now, what happens when you do get to a point where you are needing that mouth, right? Because there's going to be a level in performance where at some point you're going to need it. Will that increase someone's work capacity while they're working out? Like they'll be able to handle more stress load while they're training. So how would that help someone if they were, if they're working out and they're always breathing from their mouth? If they were to switch to nose, I'm sure the training would probably change in the first, couple of weeks. But the long term, what would be some of the benefits of relearning that breathing pattern while they're training?
Like faster recovery, right? So like the biggest thing is that when we start at first, yes, like, right. When they start, they're probably not going to get a lot done in that. And they're going to feel like they need to overgasp. And then just like, it is very much being cautious so that when you take that gas through the mouth, are you switching over to chest breathing? Because most will. Like that's where they feel like they can get a full breath. They're not focusing on taking a mouth breath and actually activating a full diaphragmatic belly breath inhale. So again, when you can do it for longer periods of time and you can keep that breathing going, the biggest thing is that you need to recognize is that we need carbon dioxide. And so if we overbreathe and we're breathing off too much carbon dioxide, that is where you're going to lose that oxygen from going into the tissues and the muscles and having proper recovery.
All right. So
really, that's what it comes down to, is like, you want the proper recovery. Like you can breathe and not all of your oxygen is going to get released and go into the tissues and organs if we don't have the carbon dioxide. You need carbon dioxide to release oxygen out of the cell, out of the hemoglobin, to get into that tissue.
The less breaths I take during my training session, and the more I can get my belly and my diaphragm activated, the more nitric oxide, which is going to be great for my workout. And then I can drive the oxygen into the cell and the tissue, which is going to enhance my recovery set to set. And the next day, help me set to set. Plus, it helps lower my cortisol, which means that my recovery hormones are actually going to be better. And if I do double sessions in a day, my cortisol levels will be more balanced. Oh, Susan, see, this is wonders here. So then now, how does the cold baths work with this? Because, I'm still going to show up to a class on Wednesday morning that you have. I told you this. So just as an inner joke, Susan used to be the general manager at the gym that I used to train at. And she used to put on a cold breathworks in the morning in Carleton Place in the water. And I would always say, yeah, I'll be there tomorrow. And I never showed up. So how does this now play into the cold therapy? Because I know that you teach the courses for that and you do it yourself, and it's been wonders for what it's done for you. So how does the breath work, cold therapy, what does that all do in terms of the healing process, in terms of, you know, let's just talk about in terms of anxiety or depression? How does that play a role in it?
Yeah, I mean,
You're
gosh,
probably like, Harry, I just opened up a whole textbook here, but what would be kind of the beginner notes of,
yeah.
you know, someone who says, you know, I have lots of anxiety, I have lots of, you know, up and down moods, and my recovery is not great, my energy is not good, my sleep isn't good. How would that breath work, ice bath work kind of play together to help them?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's, to me, it's just another modality that you utilize, right? I think the biggest thing, like why I do this as well, because again, I guess it's helped me so much, but it's also being able to give people another tool for their toolbox. So do I think it would benefit everybody? Yes. Do I think that everybody's going to do it? No, but it's just another option there. So yes, I do breathwork and cold exposure classes. And so you will never get me doing cold exposure without breath work. And there are some people that do that, but that is not me. Like, I really want to prime your nervous system. I really want you to get into this nice, relaxed, parasympathetic state, you know, in better blood flow, all of that, right? We breathe for about 40 minutes. We're in this like very calm, relaxed environment. And then you're like, yeah, then why would you throw me into a cold exposure, which is going to then heighten my sympathetic and put me back into a fight or flight response, which I'm trying to get out of. And that's a great question. And the reason that we do that is because the cold is one of the one things that can activate your parasympathetic and your sympathetic nervous system. It activates your vagus nerve, which is the longest nerve that runs in the body. And it starts at the 10th cranius nerve right behind the base of the brainstem, crosses over and goes right into all of your major organs. It's huge in your digestion and allowing for optimization, but it's the one thing that puts you into that parasympathetic state, and the cold will do that. So when you get into the cold, yes, you're heightened probably the first 45 to a minute and 15. I'd like to say it really depends. And then as we again focus on the breathing, go back to those nice long inhale and exhales, your parasympathetic system will start to kick in. Your neurotransmitters actually can be rewired in the fact that like you were like, this isn't as bad as what I thought it was. Right? You, especially why I use it for anxiety and depression, is that trauma isn't what's happened to us. It's the feelings that we've associated that to, right? And so when we get into cold, usually those feelings come up. And so it is very like, can be very intimidating for some people, but the goal is to get through those blockages and realizing like, it will never be the same thing again. You're not going to relive what you went through. You have a feeling that's attached to it. And that's why we get triggered with people around us in certain situations in life, is because that feeling comes back up again and we recreate it in our mind. Where here we can sit with it and actually allow it to process through us and then rewire and be like, that is not the same thing. I'm going to allow that trauma to not be associated to that feeling anymore. And so you will again see tons of research that is like first thing in the morning, because you know what I mean? You get in it, it's like an adrenaline, you get adrenaline out of it. And so it is a spike. And so we have a baseline, and cold plunge 250 times that baseline. And the only other thing in life that can give you that spike is crack cocaine. And so I don't think people are, I mean, there's gonna be some of us, like, I think many people aren't doing that. So where this lasts for hours, like this lasts probably around 3 to 5 hours, right? So you're going to have this steady climb and stay. And people are like, oh my God, I feel so great and so activated. I don't do that. Like, I don't plunge in the morning. I plunge at nighttime. And so you don't find a lot of research saying, like, showing the benefits of it, because it does give you that spike. And so people are like, oh my God, can you go to sleep after it? Like, I can dip at 11:30 at night and go straight to bed and fall asleep within minutes. Like, to me, mine is for my mental health. I'm not, yes, there are so many physical benefits to it, from immune function, cardiovascular function, all of it. Like, there's so many, right? We can, everything that breathwork does, cold exposure does, like weightlifting. Do you know what I mean? Like, they all play a tool in our physical well-being. To me, my cold plunging at nighttime is for me to wipe away the day. So I go into a tub and I allow whatever stress, anxiety, what has happened with kids, work, husband, all of that, to just be let go in the tub. And I can go to bed clean. It's almost like a cleansing for me. I'm not carrying anything into that space with me. So when I go to bed and I lay my head down on the pillow, there's nothing there, because that tub, all you can focus on is your breathing. You cannot go forward into your anxiety, and you can't go backwards into your depression. It is truly one moment in life where all you focus on is your present being and the feelings that are happening right there in that moment, and sticking with a breathing pattern that can keep you calm in that situation.
Kind of just wipes your day out. It's kind of like euphoric for you. You get in and it's like you just get in there and you just kind of wipes out your day, and that's the way you end your day. Okay, so that's so you would do that. You would do a breath work. So I know Dan does that. He likes that you do like a Kundalini style of yoga, then a deep breathe, and then you jump in the tub, and then he teaches you how to really exhale and work through it, and then you get out and you do another breathing technique. Because I know I did his course twice, and I made my youngest daughter is very open to trying these things, and so I got her into a cold bathtub, and then she lasted 4 minutes the first time, just cold water in the bathtub, and I just told her, I'm like, sit in here, and then she's like, oh, it's cold, it's cold. I'm like, no, just calm down and just breathe, and then boom, she was able to do it, and then I taught my wife how to do it, and the same thing. So yes, it's pretty cool to see how fast you can adapt if you stay calm and you really control that breathing. I always say, when I did it a couple times, when I learned how to control my breathing, I actually got hot, right? Like your body starts to like heat up in there, and you don't even notice it until the water moves a little bit. You're like, ooh, that you feel that. But yeah, it definitely does help that calmness. So in terms of, I have a selfish question before we end the show. Okay, so I do BJJ. Right, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So what would be in terms of breathing? Obviously, people are trying to choke you, they're putting their knee on their belly. So in terms of breathing, is there something I can do on my own to become better at a martial art of that level where we're wrestling and we're on top of each other? Is it nose breathing? What could I do that would help my performance in a 6-minute round?
Well, first of all, you'd have to start before the 6-minute round, and the fact that you should be able to have almost like great optimal breathing outside of that, because then when you are in those situations, you are going to pull from, like, if you can breathe properly outside of the BJJ, then when you get into those situations, right, we get into a panic state in any type of competition or anything like that. We allow our breathing to get heightened. We allow our anxiety to take over. We allow the stress to pump in. And that's usually when sometimes we make some mistakes. Right? We don't do the proper move, or, miss guard, do all of that. So the thing is like, can you keep your breathing under control, even if it is mouth breathing, but it's still like deep belly breathing, right? I can guarantee then you'll be better. And the biggest thing is then if you can focus on functional breathing now, of proper, like 5x5 breathing, slow and silent, and be able to consistently do that. And especially when you get into stressful situations or anything then when you start to do BJJ and you are creating this in this 6-minute round, right? And then you have a little bit of time to recover, your recovery then will be a lot faster. And that's why, if you've been noticing, people with like mixed martial artists, like you'll see them in the corner and they have their breathing, and they're really focusing on trying to like calm the breathing down, which is going to slow the heart rate down, right? Which is going to lower your blood pressure, which is going to allow your sympathetic drive not to be the thing that takes over, so that you can recover. You get a bit more, you're not over breathing carbon dioxide, you're getting more oxygen, you can recover faster so that you can repeat your performance better.
So do more training with nose breathing outside. So like riding the bike, I could just ride the bike and nose breathe at a pace where I'm comfortable, and eventually my pace and my distance will pick up, because I'll become better at being able to activate that breathing pattern.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like, not everybody's gonna be able to start at a 5x5. It's gonna be too much. And some people are like, oh my God, I feel like anxiety's coming on. Yeah, because you feel like you're not getting any air in, right? And usually then what happens is like, you're feeling that intolerance to carbon dioxide, right? Is because they're not used to having carbon dioxide in their bodies, because they're over breathing it. And so that's why sometimes slow breathing for people can feel like, I feel like I'm like suffocating. I'm not getting enough air. And so start at a 3x3, like start 3 seconds in, 3 seconds out, until you get comfortable. And then once somebody gets really comfortable with that, increase it. 4x4.
Now, this is going to sound like a ridiculous one. Should I blow my nose before it? Like, you know, like obviously there's going to be things that come out of people's noses, right? Is there something we should do? But like, obviously you got to prep. It sounds crazy, but I'm just thinking of the person saying, "Oh, well, if I did nose breathing, I'm just going to get boogers flying out of my mouth, so or out of my nose." So like,
yeah, if you want to blow it out, like sure.
And breathe through it, right? Because eventually that'll go away if you learn how to become a better breather. That'll clear it out. So
yeah. It's like the same thing, right? When people have like a plugged up nose, the best thing to do is actually take an inhale, exhale, plug the nose, and then move it like this, like all around until you literally cannot breathe anymore. Like you need to be like, oh my gosh, right? And then you do that about 6 to 7 times. So then like right as soon as you're done holding the breath, inhale through the nose and not forcefully, but inhale, exhale. You'll notice there's a bit more like clearance, but you have to do it multiple times. And it's something that you have to consistently do. It's not like, oh, I've done it 6 to 7 times. It lasted like an hour and then I'm done. Yeah. But you got to think like I'm 42. So I have created habits for 42 years. Because I change something and do it once doesn't mean everything's just like wiped clean and I should be good to go. And I think that's what people really forget. You know what I mean?
I'm just thinking of my wife because she'll say to me, well, I did it one day. How come I didn't see a difference? I'm like, oh my God. So yes.
Yeah. And that's it. It's like things like this, even with breathing, do you know what I mean? And that's why even with my kids, we do it. Like we practice proper breathing. And I am into taping your mouth at night. I don't think that everybody should do it, but I do think that it's something big. But like prime example, like Andre tapes his mouth at night and I love him. But does he still snore? And people are like, I still snore with it. Yeah, because he actually has horrible functional breathing. I made him do a video for my course and I was just like, wow, like you are an optimal client. Like you should work with me. He won't, but it's because he actually has really bad functional breathing. So yes, we can tape his mouth all we want at nighttime, but it doesn't fix his breathing because he is such a forceful breather.
Gotcha.
Snoring is actually from the vibration of how forceful his inhales and exhales are.
Okay. Yeah, this is good because I find a lot of people will just skip to the ice bath or they'll just skip to the mouth taping, but they don't realize that there's work that needs to be done in preparation for it, right? So it's like, you know, I tell people I look at a lot of life, I look at like martial arts, like there's a white belt for a reason, then there's a blue belt, then there's a purple belt. You have to go through those chapters to maximize the benefit of the end game. And number 2 is you have to prepare the body for these stages. Because then when you do get to that higher level, now you've mastered everything, but your body knows what it's doing. Like there's a rewiring of the operating system that we need to go through for you to sustain it. And when you go through that time period of like doing the white belt stuff, it's where you learn the different ways of finding which optimal breathing is for you and which system worked better for you. And sometimes it is beneficial to try different systems and not just try the one that your friend tried and figure out what's best for you, because your friend might be in great shape and has done nose breathing and is, you know, doesn't have a big neck and doesn't have a broken nose, doesn't suffer from anxiety and depression. And here you are, you're the complete opposite. And you've got 5 of those types of issues and you're trying to do what they do and you're not seeing the benefits.
Totally, right? I mean, it's just like anything, like no workout plan should be used for the same person. Like everybody has their own things, like same thing with the nutrition. Like there's no one like size fits all. And it's the same thing with breathing, right? People go straight to nighttime breathing, be like, oh, if I do like tape my mouth, like Andre is a prime example, but like also then you're just going to go back to dysfunctional breathing during the day. But then same thing, like if you do dysfunctional breathing through the day and you don't also fix nighttime breathing, then you just inhibit that pattern again, because in those 8 hours of sleeping, if you are sleeping 8 hours, our body's at rest. And that's when we go back to like natural things. And then that rewires the pattern. Be like, well, this is what I do at nighttime. So it's like, you start somewhere, like, and I get where people like, I want to throw everything in, but like start somewhere. So like start during the day of just like practicing natural breathing and functional breathing. And then if somebody is wanting to start taping, the biggest thing is like start taping throughout the day. Like try taping during the day, because people then try to do it at nighttime and they're like, oh my God, I got a panic attack. Like I woke up and I had to like rip it off and it was like freak me out. Yeah, don't do that. So like the next time that you're cooking dinner or you're watching TV or you are on a bike or whatever, like tape your mouth.
So what you're, so yeah, I was just gonna ask you that, like, what about just riding the bike for 5 to 10 minutes, putting
Yeah.
on mouth tape, or, when people are working at their computers and they don't have to be on any meetings, just practicing even that, because that's where they're getting the most of their anxiety is when they're at work and all those emails, text messages are all coming through. And you're saying that, mouth taping at night is great, but practicing just breathing with mouth tape during the day would be beneficial. But if I was to recap everything I've kind of learned today is breathe more from your nose in general, right? Number two is any chance you get, try to really activate the nose to the belly, right? So I can really activate the diaphragm and my rib cage. So when I'm breathing, I should feel pressure in my back, right? Because then I'm actually activating everything.
Yes.
When you work out, try to breathe more through your nose, maybe do a little bit of cardio or walking with nose breathing to make me better at performance. And cold bath, you don't have to jump right into cold bath if you're intimidated by it. You can just learn how to breathe. And then when you do get in there, you'll be better at it. And then from there, mouth taping isn't for everybody. You can start at any time of the day. It doesn't need to be at night. If anything, what you're saying is the 16 hours during your day is more important than the 6 to 7 hours of which you're sleeping, to really change your breathing patterns for the day. And it's okay if boogers fly out. You can just retrain that system to get it back up and running so you can get there. So this is amazing. So now, how do people get a hold of you? Because I know you have a course, you do one-on-ones with people, you do weekend workshops, and you know that we're building a new facility. So we're going to have you in. So how does someone get a hold of Susan saying, I want to learn how to breathe?
They can go to my website, which is just susanrbenoit.com, or they can email me at info@susanrbenoit.com or susanrbenoit@outlook.com. Like I'm on Instagram at Susan Benoit. But yeah, it's kind of what so I do everything. Like, I do one-on-ones from functional breathing. I work with young kids to actually learn how to proper breathe, to advanced athletes, to then people that are wanting to work through whatever maybe trauma or blockages they have to get better. I do 4-week series. I do stuff at Yoga Town, and I have my own certification with a business partner and lots of things. So
So are you currently taking on clients? Because that's the first thing we want to make sure you're not full. You are taking on clients.
Yeah.
And then your workshops, do you have one once a month so that if people miss one, they can get in? That'll be all on your website?
Yeah. So right now, like I don't have any like 1-day workshops. Right now we do like 4-week series. So we just started one at Yoga Town. My January ones are here happening at my studio. But if people just kind of contact me and they want to jump into one, I can usually like fit room for like a drop-in. And then there is one-on-one options. I'm running a retreat in March. So it'll be like yoga, breathwork, and plunge outside, doing all of that.
So is that like a weekend, like a retreat? Is that a weekend where someone will have to leave, or is that just in Ottawa, or how does that work?
Right out by Kingston, like about a half an hour before or 20 minutes before Kingston. And so it starts Friday and goes till Sunday. So you will do breathwork with yoga with Tracy from Yoga Town. Okay. And then I will go through 40-minute breathwork sessions. And then we'll do cold exposure where I'll go out and cut a hole in the water. And then we'll do cold exposure there as well. So it's kind of a full-blown thing. Yeah.
So will food be included? Stay, everything? And the reason why I ask that is because I meet with a lot of women, right? And a lot of dudes. And I think that one thing about those retreats is a lot of people go on these vacations and they just say, oh, I'm going to go, or bachelorette parties. And I always say to myself, a cool experience would be going with friends and not drinking and doing something that is going to be empowering to your health, and make it a health bachelorette or a health party, instead of just being let's go away for a birthday party and go to Montreal and drink when we're already tired, we're already burned out, we don't know what we're doing. Whereas they could use something like this and saying, hey, you know what, let's not go and do that, let's go do a retreat and just do something different and come back re-energized, rebuilt, recovered, and bring skills with us that make us better for the year, right? I think a lot of people should do something like that 1 to 2 times per year. It's a vacation based on health. So this has been wonderful. This has been very helpful for me. I appreciate your patience in me asking all those questions. But, I think that these are the questions that a lot of people did. And I think you clarified a lot of basic things. And the one thing I really love is that a lot of people will always say they don't have time. right? But
God, you have time.
but
All the time.
what you just explained is you could be doing this while you're typing, while you're walking to do your groceries. You can do it anywhere. Breathing is free, and it doesn't, and you can do it any time of the day, because there's going to be a time when you're alone where you can just sit and breathe. So this is amazing. This has been
If I could say one thing, like that's it, is that at the end of the day, you are the only one that's in control of your breath. And at any moment, you can change the size, the shape, the length, the depth, the volume of it. You can change your reaction. So the next time you want to react to something in a poor way, pay attention to how your breathing is. Change your breathing, and I can guarantee you're going to change your reaction.
there's no way to end it other than that. That was amazing. Thank you very much, Susan, for your time. Thank you for sharing your personal journey. I think that a lot of people can relate to that. And I hope they reach out to you if they're going through that themselves, because, it's great to have people who have gone through, their own demons, and they will understand where that person's coming from, because there's that empathy and understanding. And people need to know that there's resources out there of people who have actually gone through it, not just people in white coats telling them how they should feel. And your experience and your ability to share and communicate your story was amazing. And I'm thankful that you are at, and that was just a great podcast. And I'm thankful you took the time to do this on Snowmageddon, right? Tons of snow today. So this was great.
Yeah. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.